If you open up your phone right now, I mean, I guarantee you're no more than maybe 3 taps away from someone telling you to live in the present.
Oh, absolutely. It is literally everywhere.
Right. We have like mindfulness apps, yoga retreats, and just thousands of self-help books all preaching the exact same gospel.
Yeah, the conventional wisdom is basically that anxiety comes from dwelling on the future.
Exactly. And depression comes from ruminating on the past. So the only logical solution they give us is to just anchor yourself violently to the now.
Right, the now.
It feels like this ultimate, undeniable truth of mental well-being. But what if that exact advice, the very thing we are all striving for, is actually a trap?
That is a pretty wild question.
It is. And for you listening, as the third person in the room with us today, we are going on a deep dive into a 2018 philosophical essay by an author named Zhu Feng.
And it's titled Transcending Time and Space by Living in the Future.
Yes. And it proposes this radical idea that completely flips modern mindfulness on its head. It argues that living in the present is not a cure at all, but, a cage.
A cage.
Wow. Yeah, and that true transcendence comes from completely abandoning the now entirely,
It is quite a departure from the usual psychological advice we encounter.
to say the least.
Right. And to really do this justice, I feel like we need to change our conceptual backdrop for this deep dive. Let's move away from the gritty, bill-cluttered cityscape of our daily routines.
Okay, I am mentally leaving the city.
Perfect. Picture, instead, an expansive, ethereal star chart, because the journey this text takes us on is fundamentally about untethering ourselves from the physical constraints we usually accept as, absolute reality.
Right, that unquestionable reality.
Exactly. It asks us to look at the very architecture of how we perceive time itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why the author wants us to completely abandon the present, we first have to understand how this essay defines existence itself.
Yeah, it starts with a very bold foundational premise.
It really does. The text states, man is life, but it defines life in all capital letters.
All right, capital L-I-F-E.
And it separates that concept entirely from biology.
The author makes a sharp distinction between our standard biological definition of living and this concept of capitalized life.
So what exactly is the capitalized version?
Well, in this context, life is described as a non-material structure characterized by spirituality.
Meaning the physical body isn't the main event.
Exactly. The physical body, like the flesh, the blood, the nervous system, it's merely a temporary vehicle.
Okay.
The absolute core component, the actual engine of this non-material structure is consciousness. Everything stems from that point.
So the universe isn't just a bunch of physical stuff.
According to this framework, no. It isn't a collection of physical objects that just happen to contain conscious beings. It is a playground of experiences designed specifically for consciousness to navigate.
This leads to a detail that kind of broke my brain for a second when I first read it.
Oh, I know the part you mean.
The text argues that for consciousness, which is the true core of life, there is absolutely no difference between reality and illusion, or past and future, or even time and space.
None at all.
Right. The essence of life is simply perception and experience. If your consciousness perceives it, it is real, full stop.
And that is the pivotal mechanism of the author's entire philosophy. Without perception and experience, life simply does not exist.
Because it's all about what the consciousness registers.
Precisely. Because perception is the only metric that actually registers within our non-material structure. The dividing line we draw between what is physically happening in front of us and what we are vividly imagining.
It's just arbitrary.
It's entirely arbitrary. The consciousness doesn't have a filter to separate real-world data from imagined data. It only processes the resulting experience.
Wait, I'm struggling to square this with basic physical reality. Like, the text is literally saying that reading about a roller coaster or imagining one is the exact same thing as physically riding one.
That's the argument.
That seems incredibly counterintuitive, but when I chewed on it, I realized we actually experience this loophole in our daily lives all the time.
Oh, definitely.
Think about when you play a terrifying, immersive video game. You are sitting in your living room, you are completely safe on your couch,
Very safe, yeah.
but your character turns a dark corner in the game,
Yeah.
a monster jumps out, and your physical body reacts instantly.
Your heart rate spikes.
Yes, your palms start sweating. You might actually physically jump or yell out loud.
Mm-hmm.
Your biological body is having a very real, measurable stress response to pixels on a screen.
Even though your logical brain knows it is an illusion.
Exactly. Your perception of the threat is entirely real.
What's fascinating here is how the author takes that exact phenomenon and elevates it to a universal principle of existence.
So taking the video game thing and applying it to everything.
Right. If we look at the mechanics of your video game analogy, your physical body is just the hardware, like the monitor.
And my consciousness is wonder.
Your consciousness is the cloud-based software. The text explicitly states there is no difference between playing games online and participating directly in the physical world.
So a virtual chat is just as real as a physical one.
It argues there is no difference between a dream chat and a face-to-face chat, or between concrete practice and imaginative practice.
Wow.
Yeah, a threat in a digital space registers in the cloud of your consciousness just the same as a physical threat.
So the author uses this biological loophole to conclude that the distinction between reality and illusion is basically just what do they call it? A stubborn problem in human perception.
Stubborn problem, yes. For pure consciousness, those physical boundaries simply do not exist.
Which means if you have a vivid dream that you are falling off a cliff, you feel the absolute visceral terror of falling.
You really do.
The physical ground rushing up to meet you isn't real, but the terror is undeniably real.
Yeah.
And that perception of terror is the only thing your consciousness actually records and takes away from the event.
The physiological response proves the philosophical point, right?
Yep, it totally does.
If we accept that premise, the perception and experience are the only true currency of life, it forces an uncomfortable question.
Oh, what's the question?
If our brains truly cannot tell the difference between fighting a virtual monster and a real one, why do we spend the vast majority of our waking hours actively choosing to focus our consciousness on the most stressful data points in our physical environment?
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that question leads directly into the author's critique of what they call four-dimensional thinking.
Yes, the core problem.
And it perfectly explains why the text thinks our modern obsession with the now is actually shackling us.
The text argues that human cognition is severely limited by time and space. We are trapped in this linear progression of past, present, and future.
Always constantly reacting to our immediate physical environment.
Right. The author describes this as four-dimensional thinking, which acts as a prison. This limitation restricts our thinking, making it entirely impossible for us to break through the shackles of physical reality.
We just become chained to the relentless sequence of daily events.
And the tiny physical space we happen to occupy.
I hear that. I do. But it goes against literally everything we are taught about mental health.
Sure, it flips the script entirely.
Every therapist, every life coach tells you to focus on the breath. Focus on the physical sensation of the step you are taking right now. If escaping into our imagination is so powerful, why is living in the present universally touted as the ultimate goal for peace of mind?
Well, to understand the author's disdain for mindfulness, we really need to unpack how four-dimensional thinking actually works in this framework.
Okay, break it down for me.
Imagine a two-dimensional character drawn on a flat piece of paper. Their entire reality consists of moving forward, backward, left, and right.
They can't look up.
They cannot comprehend the concept of up. If you reach down and lift that character off the paper into the third dimension, their reality completely breaks.
Wow.
Human thinking is trapped on that flat paper of space-time. We experience time as a relentless, unstoppable conveyor belt.
Just constantly moving forward.
Right. And according to the text, living in the present is the most typical example of a cognition that is fully surrendered to that conveyor belt.
So it's like giving up.
It is an admission of defeat to the constraints of reality. The author views it as purely human thinking, which falls drastically short of the cognition of what they call lives, higher than human beings.
So by practicing mindfulness, we are essentially forcing ourselves to stare intensely at the paper we are drawn on, rather than realizing we have the capacity to float above it.
Exactly. That is a great way to put it.
If your consciousness, your cloud-based software, is capable of experiencing anything, anywhere, at any time, without distinguishing between reality and illusion, then forcefully tethering it to the physical limitations of the exact moment you are in is like a massive downgrade.
It's a huge downgrade.
It would be like having access to a limitless quantum computer, but refusing to use anything other than a physical floppy disk because you want to stay grounded.
That technological parallel perfectly captures the text's argument. You are voluntarily restricting your processing power.
And the author takes this beyond just a theoretical loss of potential, right?
Yes, much further. It's not just that living in the present is a cosmic downgrade. It's that living in the present is, objectively speaking, an agonizing, friction-filled experience.
Oh, the text does not hold back on this point at all. This is where the philosophy really meets the pavement.
It gets very practical.
Why is living in the present so deeply flawed? Because, the author argues, the present is simply miserable.
Brutally so.
The text provides this incredibly specific, almost exhausting catalog of daily miseries that we are all forced to endure. On one hand, you have the grand existential dreads weighing on us.
Like the pursuit of food, clothing, shelter.
Right. Alongside the inevitability of birth, aging, sickness, death, and natural disasters.
The heavy, unavoidable realities of biological existence that constantly threaten our physical vessels.
But then, right alongside those massive existential threats, the author lists the painfully mundane frictions of daily life.
The everyday stuff.
The text specifically calls out electricity bills, water fees, internet fees, vehicle repair costs, house rent.
It's quite a list.
And perhaps the most relatable line in the entire essay. The author literally notes that the giving of presents between people is annoying enough.
I mean, that is so relatable. It creates a brilliant juxtaposition.
It really does.
It effectively highlights the pervasive, inescapable nature of present moment anxiety. The cognitive learn of existing in the now is staggering.
It's not just the looming fear of a natural disaster.
No, it's the slow, grinding friction of everyday social and financial obligations. When you anchor yourself to the present, you are forcing your consciousness to process an endless stream of microstressors.
Think about your own mental load right now, you listening to us. How much of your immediate present is consumed by worrying about making rent or feeling an undercurrent of anxiety about buying an appropriate gift for a coworker?
Or dreading an upcoming car repair.
Exactly. The text argues that actively choosing to live in this moment is choosing to engage with the most troublesome and painful experiences available to you.
And that mundane friction eventually compounds into a much darker reality. The text shifts its tone quite sharply here to address the ultimate consequence of being trapped in the present.
Yeah, it gets very serious.
The author points out the tragic reality that nearly 1 million people commit suicide globally every year, with millions more attempting it and hundreds of millions considering it.
It is a staggering, sobering statistic to drop into the middle of a discussion about time and space.
It is, but it serves a crucial function in the architecture of their argument. The author asks a fundamental question: why do people reach that point?
And what's their answer?
The answer provided is that the present is simply too bitter. For these individuals, the now has become terminal.
There's just no way out.
There's no hope, no turning point, no bright future visible from their current physical vantage point.
So the focus on the now is actually harmful.
The tragedy of living in the moment, the author argues, is that for many people, the present offers absolutely nothing but despair. When a person is fully anchored in an unbearable present, and their four-dimensional thinking convinces them that the present moment is the only reality that exists, the pain becomes inescapable.
Because there's no future to look forward to.
Exactly. The collapse of future perspective is what makes the present lethal.
That is incredibly heavy, but it makes the author's antidote so much more profound. We have established how agonizing the present can be, and we have established the text's premise that our consciousness is totally malleable.
Right. It cannot tell the difference between physical reality and vivid imagination.
Exactly. So the text merges these two concepts into a proposed solution, introducing a fascinating thought experiment, the 1 million yuan scenario.
The psychological mechanism of this thought experiment beautifully illustrates the power of untethering from the present.
Let's walk through it. Imagine a person who is in deep distress. They are in that dark, terminal place we just talked about, where the present is utterly unbearable and they are considering ending their life.
Okay.
Now, imagine if that person suddenly received absolute, undeniable proof that they were going to receive 1 million yuan tomorrow.
Or that they would meet a noble person who would completely save them.
Yes, or that in exactly a few years, they would achieve massive, life-changing success. The physical reality of their present hasn't actually changed.
They are still sitting in the dark.
They're still broke. They're still struggling in this exact millisecond. But would that person still despair today?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see the profound biochemical and psychological shift the author is highlighting here.
So they wouldn't despair.
The text argues that no, they would not commit suicide. In fact, they would likely live happily today.
Just based on the promise of tomorrow.
Exactly. Their consciousness has effectively time traveled. The despair evaporates entirely, even though their physical bank account hasn't changed yet.
The brain just reacts to the future data.
The brain immediately begins releasing dopamine and serotonin based entirely on a future concept, proving the text's point that consciousness commands the physical body based on data that does not physically exist in the present moment.
It reminds me of the psychology behind booking a vacation. Think about working a terrible, soul-crushing job.
Oh, I've been there.
We all have. The weeks leading up to a planned vacation are suddenly so much easier to handle. Your boss is still awful, the work is still tedious, but the friction doesn't bother you anymore because your mind is already on the beach.
You've already checked out.
Right. Your consciousness is already sipping a drink in the sun, so it stops registering the annoyance of the office.
The anticipation doesn't just act as a temporary distraction, it becomes the primary reality for the consciousness.
That makes total sense.
The author is essentially asking, if this mechanism is hardwired into our biology, why not make it a permanent state of being? Letting the consciousness live in the future makes the present bearable.
Because perception dictates the entire state of your life.
As established earlier, yes. So it is logically much wiser to let your consciousness experience a bright, guaranteed future rather than dwelling on a miserable present.
The imagined future acts as a permanent anesthetic for the physical pain of the now.
Precisely.
We should pause here and be clear with you listening. Our goal today is purely to dissect the mechanics of this philosophy. The text provides very specific conceptual realms to visualize, and we're going to explore them to understand how this thought experiment is supposed to work in practice.
Right, we are exploring the architecture of the idea.
Exactly. We are not endorsing these specific viewpoints or organizations, and we aren't telling you to pack your mental bags for these exact destinations. We simply want to unpack the ideas the original author presents for visualization.
Because the text doesn't just say, imagine a generic nice beach.
No, it is highly specific.
Very. It provides highly specific destinations for your consciousness to inhabit. The author clearly believes that generic daydreaming lacks the structural integrity needed to truly transcend time and space.
You need a solid mental blueprint.
Right. They provide particular utopian visions designed to firmly hold your mental focus. The text suggests allowing yourself to live in the future by vividly imagining that you reside in the new oasis for life created by Lifechanyuan.
Okay, that's the first one.
Yes. They also offer a progressive hierarchy of conceptual realms. There is the 1,000-year world,
Okay.
the 10,000-year world, and finally, the Celestial Islands continent.
So what does this all mean for the person actually attempting to do this? Like, if I successfully untether my mind from my physical living room and manage to fully immerse my consciousness in the idea of living in the Celestial Islands continent,
Yeah.
theoretically, I become bulletproof against daily stress.
It's the theory, yes.
Because my annoying coworker and my rent bill simply do not exist in the Celestial Islands.
You have isolated the exact practical benefit the author promises. The text posits that by directing your mental energy to inhabit these specific idealized future spaces, your current miseries simply disappear into smoke and clouds.
Smoke and clouds. I like that.
It is not just about avoiding stress. It is about fundamentally restructuring what your mind accepts as reality.
So the mundane worries become mere illusions.
Because your consciousness is no longer registering the physical world as your primary environment.
The physical world just becomes background noise, while the real you is living in a futuristic utopia.
Furthermore, the progressive nature of these realms, moving from a 1,000-year world to a 10,000-year world, is designed to actively reprogram the brain's relationship with mortality.
How so?
The text argues that in this state of constant future visualization, every day in the physical world becomes as interesting and low stakes as playing a game.
Wow, because the stakes are removed.
Exactly. And most profoundly, by living in a beautifully visualized future, one becomes entirely fearless in the face of death.
Because if your consciousness is already firmly planted in a 10,000-year world, physical death isn't an end at all.
It's just a transition.
It is just the moment your physical body finally catches up to where your mind has been living for years. Death just becomes stepping through a door you've already opened.
That is beautifully put. The text concludes that death can even be accepted with genuine joy. The future you are moving into has already been built by your own visualized thinking.
It's waiting for you.
Living actively in a beautiful future, according to the author's framework, is infinitely more meaningful, valuable, and rational than suffering through the limitations of the present.
It is a complete and total inversion of how modern society tells us to engage with reality. We started this deep dive looking at the massive cultural obsession with being present.
Right, the mindfulness movement.
And how we are constantly told to anchor ourselves to the physical reality of the now. We've journeyed through Su Feng's argument that because our consciousness fundamentally cannot distinguish between reality and imagination, tying ourselves to a painful present is, well, a tragic waste of our mental software.
A total waste of potential.
From the exhausting friction of paying water bills to the profound terminal despair that leads to global suicide, the Sleeging is painted not as a sanctuary, but as a cage of four-dimensional thinking.
A cage we voluntarily lock ourselves in.
And the key to breaking out of that cage is our own inherent ability to vividly visualize and thereby inhabit a perfect future. It really makes you reflect on your own mental habits.
It really does.
For you listening, is your intense, mindful focus on the physical now actually serving your well-being? Or would a little deliberate mental time travel, a little structured escapism, actually ease the burden of your daily stress?
It is a highly compelling proposition for individual peace of mind, no doubt.
Yeah.
But it leaves us with a necessary, perhaps troubling, friction to consider on a macro level.
What's the friction?
If our consciousness truly cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined future and the physical present, what happens to our shared physical reality if all of us collectively decide to abandon the now? If everyone is living entirely within their own perfect mental utopias, untethered from the immediate suffering of the physical world, do we lose our collective ability and our motivation to fix the present?
That is a dark thought.
If we are constantly living in tomorrow, who is left to take care of today?
That is a phenomenal question to leave you with. A huge thank you to you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your reality wherever and whenever you happen to be living in it.